Hello and welcome again. Today we're going to talk a little bit about geographic visualization using Tableau Public. The aim of this session is to describe how location can be an important aspect to visualize data, especially in healthcare trends or healthcare domains. And we are going to be using Tableau Public, and this is going to be a double purpose since this is going to be also a tutorial in how to use the basic functionality that we have in Tableau Public. Then it's expected that you already downloaded the version. The version that we are going to be working today is the 2026.1.0. It may change in the future, the version, then the look and feel may be not the same, and just as reference as for your functionality. Also, we are going to be using a particular data set for the example, and that data set is available in the CDC. It's called the CDC Wonder, where you can create some queries, and we are specifically working in the underlying cause of deaths between 2018 and 2020. They have more data sets there, and this is the one that we're going to be focusing, and we can start selecting the groups of data that we want. And in this case, we are having state, county, and sex. That we have the classification. You can select different options and be sure that you have export results, and you can do either CSV or Excel. I like CSV. They are lighter files and easy to transport, and they create less artifacts than Excel. You can download Excel if you are going to be processing things in Excel, but for Tableau is straightforward to use CSVs. Why? Because even though you can import from Tableau multiple files like Microsoft, JSONs, Access, PDF, spatial statistical file, we are going to be using the text file, and that state county and sex that we have there, for example, and it's going to bring the table. And if you notice, it's going to try to classify the different variables in different ways. It's important to understand what we are seeing and how the interface work. Then always that you want to add the data, you can come to the add, and you can select any of the type of the files that you want, or you can connect to a server. In this case, we're just using the data that we download, and here you're going to have the historical data that you have used in the past. Also, if you notice, you have an entity relationship image here. You can create relationship between tables and have really complex queries, but that's outside of the aim of today. Then usually we work in the different sheets down here, and we can create a new worksheet. We can create dashboards or stories, but we are going to focus today on sheets. And if we look, then in the left we have tables, and we have different variables that have been named here. Then you have like the country code, node, sex code, state code, the state and county, and these are things that we call measures, things that we can quantify. Then this is one of the interesting differentiations that we want to learn, that Tableau have two types of data. One is called dimensions, and the other one is called measures. Then dimensions usually are categorical data, that they are the independent variables that we use to organize data in groups. And we can slice them because they can have categories. And you don't do sum or calculations or aggregations on that. You don't sum counties. You don't sum states because they're names, they're words. Then you cannot really do operations with them in the way that you can aggregate them. You can do some transformation and some interesting things, but basically that's the idea. In measures are the output variables. They could be quantitative or they usually are quantitative numerical data, but they can be also categorical data, similar to the dimensions, but they are going to be output variables more than categorical variables. Usually we call them the dependent variables, and we use in calculation like the sum, average, count, and they are going to answer then that type of equation, the how much, how many, how long. And you can aggregate them, you can recalculate them, you can do different operations in the interface, and usually the are the one that we can display. Then here we see that these ones are classified as measures and these ones are classified as dimensions. How do we know? These are blue and these are green. That's a visual cue that Tableau provides us. If we look into the data source has a column that says nodes. And there are a lot of null elements that there. Why is that? Is because this table, when you export the data, actually at the very end of the file, we are just seeing 100 rows here, and this has tons of rows. Those nodes are written in the end of the file in that column. Since we are not going to be using that column, it's one of those elements that we can hide from the dataset. Then it's not going to be creating any noise. Now we don't have that null, and we are not going to be having that variable available in any way in the element. Also, if you look into the data, when you import the data says state code, county code, and these are the geographic information that we have. But I want to grab your attention here that we already have latitude and longitude. Then this is one of those characteristics of Tableau that is able to infer and create a new data based on some inference about the variable names and the content of the names. Then in this case, by experience, I know that latitude and longitude, they are already mapped to state, but they can be mapped to county or to different standardized data sets that we have. Then let's start doing things. We have columns and rows, and usually is the way that we organize this. And since we are looking into dates, then we can put the dates in rows, no? And it's not telling anything because this is just the whole sum of all deaths in the data set. That's what is happening there. But what happened if I just take the state and add columns? Boom. Now we have in the predefined order, that in this case is the alphabetical order, these elements. And you notice that here we have two nulls. It has, hey, you have two nulls, and it's helping us to filter the data. Hey, just remove those nulls. Why do we have nulls in the data set? Remember that I told you that that table is bringing additional data, is because at the very end of the data set, it is adding rows that are in relationship with that those nodes that we hide. Then we can filter the data here, and we can say that, hey, we want to have some filters where in this case the state Okay, we select all except the null ones. And that's the data set that we are going to be using. You see, we used to have 6,300 and something. Now we have 6,277, and we can remove the nulls. And this is what we call clean the data, no? Because sometimes the data is not really, or the data set has extraneous data or data that is not contributing to us. And if you notice, remember, then we have measures in green and we have dimensions in a in blue. We can have different operations here. We can create additional filters. We can sort. We can sort by the actual response. We have that ascending, descending, and we select which field is the one that is going to help us. And there are several ways that we can filter and sort the data. Then we can just manipulate the data right away here, and this is going to give us a really interesting information. The other thing that we can do is imagine that this is an ordinal variable, then we can use that filter in order to put that in the order that we want to see the data. Now, if we look into these icons right here, the icons are telling us about the type of data that we have. Then we have some hash signs. Usually those represent numbers. ABC is that we have a categorical and a variable that is represented in text. We have a hierarchy because he was able to establish that the state and county, they have some relationship, and that hierarchy is represented here. And we have the globe that represents geographical information. It, as I mentioned before, it knows that a state, it looks like this is geographical information, and it tries to do some computations and create latitude and longitude. We also can have Boolean variables that are logical variables, and we can have date time variables that are going to be presented in different ways. And as you see, it's really specific when a variable is generated. Uh, and also we can create calculated fields. We can create calculated fields, and those calculations are going to be using some of the variables. You can just start typing, and you can have the growth rate divided by the population. It says that it's invalid. What did I wrong? Yes, I'm missing the operand, I know. But... Yes, and then you have an equal sign here that is telling that it's calculation. Today, the objective for today is not to debug this, but just to demonstrate that there are possibilities of creating calculated fields. Okay, that said, we already have in the numeric variables, we can have continuous variables, or we can have discrete variables. And the continuous variables are going to be represented usually as lines. But if you look at this, Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, this is not really represented a continuum because there is no the connection more than just the alphabetical order in those numbers, and that's why bars are preferred. But then when we change the type of variable, then we can modify the way that is represented. Then we can make that some crude rate discrete, and it's not going to be computed as necessarily a sum, but you see that now it became a categorical variable. Then in this case, we want to keep that as continuous because it's numeric and is representing that uh, that property of the numbers. Okay, then now we have the categories, we have the 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 axes, the labels. As I mentioned, you can include dates. Let's go to our data sources and try to add one that has dates. Use this. This data source that has dates. Not letting me create the union. Let's come here and create a new data source is trying to import those dates, but it's not really allowing us to use it. Okay, let's say that we want to add a map while we import that. Then we want to have a map, and then to be able to use the map, we use the latitude, the longitude. Okay, and now we have a map. Then we can say, hey, I want to map the states. You see, now we have the states represented in colors. But this is not giving us too much information. Here we just are putting labels in the longitude and latitude. That is where the states are located. If we try to add the county, it goes blank. Why goes blank? You see what it says here, more than 3K unknown. You can edit the locations and you see that it was not able to recognize the county properly. This is because in the way that is written is not the standard way to represent the county in Tableau, but we can create the mapping or clean the data and use the adequate this is elements, this one, and use the right mapping or clean things, and now we have the counties map. You see, and Abilene elements and other year they have been mapped already. Yes, we are not going to be doing that mapping manually, but is to tell you when sometimes the map is not working is because we haven't really mapped the information properly. But I'm going to show you a trick. This county code is actually a geographic role because that county code is going to be a county. And I can bring that county code, and now they are appearing there. We still have 317 unknowns because for some reason this category of counties were not mapped properly, but mapping 317 is easier than mapping 3000. And of course then is so those are codes that you can see that are for Alabama, Arkansas, Colorado, Arizona, and California, and Connecticut, that they are not using the standard way of looking at that. Right now we are just seeing counties and states, but we don't have additional layer. But it's really easy to just take a continuous variable, add it. Let's remove one of these, and we want to make these colors. And magic, now we have a color plate created in the map, and we are using just this gradient for the colors, and you can edit the actual scale that you want to use. You can have a scale in oranges, you can have a scale that goes from green and red, uh, and you can manipulate these scales in several ways. Then is the limit is basically what you want to do, and just explore and create. And it happens that you don't want to see this by county, but you only want this by state. Then you can just remove this, or we can create filters in drill down using these properties here. But remember that the county code, we didn't really map that properly, and now we can, yep, kind of drill down, because now it's able to map the county and the state. Now we can play with this hierarchy of a state county and be able to go to the master detail. You see here we have the scale, and we can move the legend to different parts, or we can also edit from here the color scale that we have. We can also have different representations of the data, and instead of having colors, we can represent elements on size. I'm going to remove this. Oh, what happened? Okay, then as you see, automatically we're having then the tooltips and having the different elements. We can have also additional uh, variables represented in the graph, and then you can play with different representations or different elements. Actually, we can have this as part of the filters and be able to reduce or change the way that we are looking into the data. Or we can create pages based on the different cards. And then we can have different pages for different states, and or just make them available. Yes, we went to the three. uh, just come back here. Have this. Then now this has been a quick introduction in how to utilize Tableau, how we can play with the different elements, how we can create maps, and how we can populate them. Now you are welcome to play with representing things in bars or representing things in circles, and circles then they and try different combinations of different elements and try to obtain different results in your visualizations. And even you can have a some possibilities of building actually dashboards where you are just recycling some of those visualizations that you already created, and then you can create that appearance of drilling down, and then you can organize things, modify the text. And these visualization are actually the ones that we can post in the web. And actually, if your data sets are live data sets, that means that those are data sets that are coming from databases, you can have automatically updated visualizations that are going to be public in the world. That's pretty much what I wanted to share with you today. I hope that you find this useful, and looking for uh, your future homeworks, and happy to answer questions and have one-on-ones if you need them. Then see you next time.